This meeting is being recorded.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to The Rock with Kenny C. We have some special guests today, not just one, but two. And I'm real excited because we have the author Matthew Miller here with us and his book, Terra Rectus. But we got my brother, Jeremy Stone, who I have not had on the show before, but we go back a ways now. And him and Josh, big times with us. Jeremy introduced me to Matthew's podcast and his book, and I have been very excited about what I've read. Really enjoy the podcast stuff. So we're gonna let Jeremy kind of take things. Jeremy, you introduced me to Matthew. Go ahead and introduce what you've got with that.
All right, so it started. Me and Matthew have a mutual friend, and out of respect, I won't name him on here, but him and I were talking for a long time, and he sent me over a podcast. Because me and him always talk about podcasts, but do send me over a podcast from Matthew from Maranatha Ministries. And
right,
I started going through each episode. And, I was listening to I've listened over 100 hours so far of his stuff. Yeah, it's just mind-boggling, bro. So the first one I had listened to was Apocalypse of Isaiah, #1. And, I got into it and I had to listen to it like 3 or 4 times because it was so deep. And a lot of things that Matthew over here presents is things that you don't hear. You know what I mean? It's like a totally different perspective and a totally different look upon the scriptures. And as I kept getting into it, I'm like, I got to show people this stuff because the way that Matthew presents it, it makes the Bible fit together like a puzzle. You know what I mean? It makes so much more sense. And he does break down the Hebrew and the Greek. And then so as I got into it more, I started sharing his stuff more because I really want other people to understand that, what Matthew has been teaching is something that's extremely important, especially when it comes to biblical eschatology. Everybody has such a falls into these 3 categories of eschatology, but this one is one that is not presented within the 3 mainstream looks of it. You know what I mean? And I'll let Matthew take it away.
We lose Jeremy there. There's Matthew, you still here, buddy?
I'm still here. I think I can take it right from there, if that's okay.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The main thing that Jeremy is talking about is most people perceive that time progresses in a linear fashion when it does not. That's not what God says. God himself says that he chases after what has been. That being the case, he also reiterates that by stating that which was is that which will be. That is to say, time is isochronal. Therefore, eschatology is isochronal. And the second part to that people really catch people off guard is that God's word is polysemic, and it is massively polysemic. Now, many people think that in a very limited fashion. For instance, the 7 churches in the book of Revelation, when you read most commentaries, they will tell you that this represents 7 church ages. However, by stating that, the case is obvious that they're saying it's polysemic because they were real life churches. Those
Right.
7 letters went to real life churches in present day Turkey.
Can you just what actually does polysemic mean? What is the terminology for that?
That means more than one. It has
Okay.
more than one meaning. So those meanings may be very colorful and very different, but that is to say, it is stating more than one thing on every occasion, every single occasion.
Okay, great. So with that being into it, you also talk about isochronal. That's another term a lot of people may have never heard from that. What does that mean?
It means that history repeats. That is to say, eschatology repeats because this is what God says. So let's use just one example. Everybody knows that the abomination of desolation was set up by Antiochus Epiphanes.
Right.
Yes, that really happened. Guess what? It happened again with Titus. Yes, it did.
Wow. Okay.
So that is to say, it is an isochronal event that goes through time. That's what the Bible always does. That's what it's going to continue to do. So we know when Matthew, there in Matthew chapter 24, when Jesus said that yes, Antiochus Epiphanes did set up the abomination of desolation according to Daniel. He was also stating this was going to happen again, and it did in 70 AD. Not only that, he prefaced that with saying that now this time is going to be different, worse than any time in history. So he's literally prophesying twice. He's saying there's going to be an event here soon that will terminate this Jewish state, and then there will be a final that terminates the entire global system. So it is an isochronal event. Jesus was literally talking isochronally, and everybody knows it.
Wow.
It's
Okay.
just that I expand on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I will say this, I've been listening to some of your podcasts, but the main thing that Jeremy got me interested in was your book, Terra Rectus, which you have up on the thing right here. And I have my copy right here. And I will say this, Matthew has said he was going to give away a free book. At some point during this thing, we're going to say the secret word. And if you know what that is and can post it and send it to me, I will put you in a run-in for a copy of the book. It's fantastic. I think people are going to go buy it, period, just because it's amazing. And there's so much stuff into it. I told Jeremy, I was like, I don't know how we're going to touch on anything. We're going to have to really keep it kind of basic and send it to your stuff, because I can't figure it out. Now I will say this, I did notice with the coming pole shift, the talk, most people probably have heard of certain types of pole shifts, and you're not talking about that. You're talking about something different. Most people probably think about, what would you say, like there's two types of pole shifts most people are probably familiar with?
Yes, most people are familiar with the first type that was proposed by Hapgood, that there is a crustal displacement. That is to say, the North Pole doesn't move. What happens is the skin of the Earth slips on it like an orange or a sock. We all understand that whenever you put your socks on in the morning, there is a place on the sock for the heel, and it fits right to it. This represents the equatorial bulge. So literally that would be the heel of the sock, but they're saying that this slips and moves around. The second one is when the North Pole moves, which is geomagnetic wonder, which occurs right now, which the North Magnetic Pole wonders. The Bible is not talking about either of those things.
Right.
And the thing about it is that people think that, well, God must just explain to you that this is going to happen to the Earth. No, he defines it existentially, even with the orbital system of our solar system. He's going to move the ecliptic. He's going to move it. And he tells you right where he's going to put it. So it is pretty amazing. A lot of information to relay.
Oh yeah, absolutely. No, I still kind of been going through the book, looking at parts, and thinking about what would be a great thing to get people interested to understand, because to me, this is when you read a lot of this and you know the Hebrew background of the words tohu, bahu, and stuff like this, when you read those and see it in Jeremiah, how it relates to Genesis, you're like, oh wow, there's some really serious stuff going on here. And it opened my eyes. I literally was like, oh my gosh, this is serious. And I hadn't seen this from anybody else. So to me, this is really fresh information, even though it may be old news for you. For myself, I was like, really, really kind of like, oh wow, we're onto something here. So, can you give us kind of an introductory into what you're talking about as far as the pole shift you're talking about? Not a crustal displacement, not a magnetic. Yours is the equator.
What mine is, literally, the rotational axis of this planet is going to move. It's going to move itself. So God is literally going to stand up the earth. That's what he says. He says so multiple times. He's going to stand the earth up. He's going to stand it up, well, erect.
Right.
That's what he says. That's what he means.
So can I ask you, when did this finally occur to you that this is what was being said in Scripture? That there had to be a point where you were studying and said, "Hey, this is not these other type of pole shift. This is something completely different." And how did you come across that?
I come across that when I was 17.
Wow, that's amazing.
Well, let me predicate that. A lot of people, that will shock them, but I graduated in 2 years.
Okay.
So I didn't go to high school for 4 years. I graduated in 2 years. So in the interim between me graduating and going my first year of college, I studied the astrophysics. And because I applied to that university, they allowed me to go into the university archives and really get my hands dirty, because I wanted to know exactly what God was talking about. And I knew that science was going to say one way or the other what happened. And of course they did.
That's amazing. I wondered how long you had come across this. So that's and I don't know what your age is. I don't know how much different from 17 to now, but it's you look pretty young, man. So I don't know what how old you are.
That was 30 years ago.
Oh wow, okay. Hey man, that's good. That's good stuff. But now, so how long did it take you to, and I know you've had Maranatha, your ministries, how long has that been going on to where you had your podcasts and your actual ministries happening?
May 20th, 2010.
Okay.
That's when. Now, I've always been a Sunday school teacher. I've always have preached in the pulpit, all depending on where we lived.
Sure.
For example, one of the places that we lived, I had the Wednesday night service. So, and all grades, I've taught all grades. So that went on until, of course, I decided to start the online ministry, which is what you're referring to.
Okay. Yeah.
The online ministry started May 20th, 2010.
Wow. So, go ahead, Jeremy.
I was going to say, in your book, so a big part of your book and what you've already touched on a little bit already is the concept of time. And I don't know if this is too heavy, but I really wanted to know if you could break down. You have a chapter in your book called As It Was in the Days of Noah, So Shall It Be Again. And you were talking about time. Could you break that down for us a little bit and how the time was different back then?
Okay. First off, let us state this. The book of Revelation is extremely clear. It says in multiple places, multiple chapters, that we're going to a 360-day year, not 365 and a quarter.
Yeah.
It says 360. In doing so, it's letting you know that time is going to a perfect sexagesimal system. What is that? That's a great big word, sexagesimal. This is how the Babylonians originally set time. This is how they did it, because we have a base 10 system, and it's very limited. The Babylonians had a base 60 system. And when you have a base 60 system, you can do extremely advanced calculations. Quite simply, it makes everything easier. You can literally reduce fractions massively simplistic. Okay, so God is telling you right off the bat, you're going to a sexagesimal system. There is no longer going to be 365.25 days in a year. There's going to be 360. So that's the best place to start. Most people know that.
Yeah.
Now, incorporated into this, most people take chapters like Matthew 24, and they don't understand that this is really what Christ is saying. He states it repeatedly that your time, how you calculate time, is going to come to a dead stop. He says it multiple times in that chapter, but reading in different various English translations is kind of hard to see. But he does say it multiple times. He's saying this time is going to stop, and you're going to go back to how Noah experienced time. So they already know. I'm just going to put some things out there very lightly. This means existentially, things have to change on this planet. For one, everybody knows about the mosquito that was found in the ember, right? And it's from this that they made the great big series, Jurassic Park.
Right.
What is real about that is this: those bubbles in the ember prove beyond any shadow of a doubt the days that Noah lived in, the ecosystem was massively different. Yes, it was. So that is to say, we're going back to a time that we presently don't experience, because right now, God has kicked us off our axis by 23.4 degrees. That's how we experience time.
Sure.
And that's how we know things to be, based off that 24 hours, which the Babylonians set up. So everybody needs to realize this, Jeremy. When Babylon is mentioned in the book of Revelation, it means a whole lot more than most people think it does.
Right.
God's literally telling you by repeatedly saying there's going to be exactly 30 days in a month. He says there's going to be exactly 1,260 days in 42 months. He's telling you you're going back to the Babylonian sexagesimal system, and that was based off the heavens. Now, most people don't understand that when you look up at a star, let's say you go to the constellation Ophiuchus, that's in the 17th hour of the heavens, because most people don't know that, ladies and gentlemen, the stars are calculated off the 24 hours of the sphere of the earth. That's what astronomical coordinates are. And most people don't realize that this is how all air and nautical almanacs are set up. All it is gives you the geolocation of stars, so that when you're out on the sea, you can track the stars and know exactly where you're at on the globe. This is exactly what the Magi done. So, for instance, I will just give you a bonus, Jeremy, something you've never heard before. Okay.
Right.
You know that Jesus was born in Bethlehem, right?
Right.
Okay. No one understand this. When you project Bethlehem into the heavens and you spin it around the sphere, you'll know what stars was directly over Bethlehem. And I'm going to blow your mind, because I'm not going to tell you everything, but I will tell you this, Jeremy. It is most probable that the Magi was looking into the constellation of the Lyre, or the harp. It's a small harp in the heavens. And it's right by the constellation that everybody knows as the eagle or the vulture. And the eagle or the vulture is carrying this Lyre. Jeremy, that is one of the possibilities, because I can take that and spin around the celestial sphere and tell you all the possibilities of the stars that they could have been watching. But now that you know that, I've probably got your attention to realize, oh my goodness, we could really calculate where the sign was. Yes, we could. We could do exactly what the Magi did, because the field artillery in the United States Army does this every time they go to the field, Jeremy. They lay off any star, let's say Polaris. They'll take their guns, lock on Polaris, and that's how they give their grid coordinates of how they can move and deliver all artillery to the target.
Wow.
That's
That is
amazing.
mind blowing. Blow my mind every single day, dude. I swear.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Now, in your opinion, do you have an opinion, at least? You must, on what the Star of Bethlehem was itself, the star that the Magi followed.
Well, I will say this, that we do have Halley's Comet that made an appearance in that window of time. Now, what's on top of that is the Bible says that the Magi seen it 2 years later, right?
Right.
The Chinese chronicle that there was another apparition of Halley's Comet 2 years later. So I'll say that emphatically. You can all run and I'll look it up. Research Halley's Comet and then research Chinese ghost comet. It's right there. Everybody knows it. Nobody's told you, Jeremy, but that's what it is.
Right.
Now, I'll even go one step further. Why was Thomas called Didymus? Didymus means twin. They weren't calling him Jesus' twin. What this most probably means is that Jesus was born during Halley's Comet, and then 2 years later, when the comet reappeared, Thomas was born.
Wow.
So this is probably why they called Thomas Didymus.
Right. The twin prophecy.
Yes.
Incredible. Well, while that we're on talking about the stars and stuff, you can pass the question if you want to. You don't have to answer it, because I don't know how deep you can, or how simple you can make these things, because they're all pretty deep.
Okay.
But I was wondering, because we talked about it at the very beginning, the 7 churches being polysemic, that whole, prophecy being polysemic, and the 7 churches representing something else. Could you explain that to us a little bit, and what those 7 churches represented in the heavens?
Sure. Everybody knows that the 7 churches of Revelation, you can actually get maps of these. They're all located inside of present-day Turkey. Everybody knows this. And when you look at the map of these churches, you realize that, there's Pergamum and Thyatira, Smyrna, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea, and Ephesus. They also show you where Patmos is on these maps, because, ladies and gentlemen, these also represent the planets. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And you're supposed to know that the earth lies in the habitable zone. Now, most people knows how the Bible starts out, that what makes it special is that the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. So literally, if you know the very first verses of the Bible, you look at the map and it shows Patmos, where the vision was given. This is the first location mentioned in Revelation, but everybody throws it out. Everybody forgets about it. They don't say anything about it. This is the planet Earth, because when you look at the map, it's in the Aegean Sea. It is where the Spirit is hovering over the waters. It's actually in the sea. So this Aegean Sea actually represents the Earth's habitable zone. Scientists usually, when they make publications on it, to simplify this for the public, they call it the Goldilocks zone. But when you take a look at it and you realize they are also separated. Now, there are 3 of the churches that are close to the coast, and there's 4 that's farther away from the coast. This is literally set up like the solar system. So, yes, a lot of people teach, and well, I will say most people teach. Most people teach, most commentaries given today will emphatically state that the 7 churches are 7 periods of time. And I'm not going to debate that, because that's neither here nor there, because it very well could be referring to those. But it is also representing real live locations. All those churches were real. You can go to these sites right now and see where these churches were at. They're real. They also represent the planets, including planet Earth. So when you know that, when you look at the first church, that first church literally mimics Mercury. Let's just do this. I'm going to tell you a few things about Mercury. Mercury's orbit is highly eccentric. That is to say, it's way out of round. It's not circular around the sun. It's getting worse and worse and worse at a geometric rate. NASA knows one day it will suffer a few fates. 1 is running into Venus. 2 is running into the Earth. That is to say, they know massive things are going to happen. It cannot stay this. When you know that, what really needs to happen is God needs to correct Mercury's orbit. In order to do that, he's going to have to make the distance of its aphelion, that is to say, its farthest point from the sun, and its perihelion, the closest point to the sun. He needs to put those 2 together. He needs to make it round again, or this fate is going to happen. And when it does, it will have massive repercussions. So God has to do something before these things happen. When you realize that, you read the letter to the first church, it's obvious he is talking about the planet Mercury. He's saying, Mercury, you must get back to your first love. He's saying you must get back to a circular orbit around the sun. So I'm going to read it. This is from the New American Standard Bible, the 95 edition, because that is the mainstay of Maranatha Ministries. To the church, the angel in Ephesus write, the one who holds the 7 stars in his right hand, the one who walks among the 7 golden lampstands, says this. Now take note. He literally just told you, you know, the one speaking is Christ. And the star that represents him, everybody knows it, is the king star Jupiter. He literally just said he's going to do a grand tack to correct whatever Ephesus is doing. I'm sorry for interrupting God's word. Let's read on. Verse 2. I know your deeds and your toil and your perseverance, that you cannot tolerate evil men, and you have put to the test those who call themselves apostles. They are not. And you have found them false. And you have perseverance and have endured for my name's sake and have not grown weary. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a perfect representation. Just look at Mercury's surface. It literally has impact craters on 100% of its surface. Verse 4. But I have this against you. You have left your first love. Literally, he's saying you have left a circular orbit. Verse 5. Therefore, remember where you have fallen. That is to say, its aphelion is too far out. And repent and do the deeds you did at first, or else I am coming to you and will remove your lampstand out of its place unless you repent. Once again, Jesus is saying that Jupiter, the king star, is going to do a grand tack, but this time it's going to come all the way into Mercury. Verse 6. Yet this you do have, that you hate the deeds of the Nicolaitans, which I also hate. He who has an ear, let him hear what the Spirit says to the churches. To him who overcomes, I will grant to eat the tree of life, which is in the paradise of God. So there you go. That's a quick rundown. I just proved existentially, and I didn't share everything I could. I just proved existentially that yes, the letter to the church of Ephesus perfectly depicts Mercury.
Right. And that's all broken down in your book. So, you know, people need to read it in order to really get into what you're talking about. And you explain it like in layman's terms. So it's really pretty much essential for you to start reading it.
Yeah, it's like, and there's also a nice graphic of showing the actual churches in Turkey. You've laid it out really well so that you can see what you're talking about with Patmos, and that's really fascinating, man. It really is. I think some people are going to be like, it's a lot. It's a lot to take in. But I will say this: I think that the book is very well written in a way that it's not so far over people's heads. It's very obtainable. You know, I like I said, the minute you start talking about it, I knew what part you were talking about in the book, and I was like, it's laid out very, very well, man. Jeremy, you have any other questions you want to talk about?
No, I just wanted to make a quick point because, you know, over Facebook, when I was posting one of his episodes, right, somebody brought in the idea that this is astrology instead of astronomy. So right. Matthew, would you like to break down the difference so people don't get confused to think that you're practicing something God absolutely hates?
Yeah. Astrology is when you look at the historic patterns of where the planets were or have been. And based on that information, you predict the future. That is, of course, absurd. Mm-hmm. That's absurd. That is paramount to worshiping the stars themselves. You are gaining your good fortunes off of what has been created. So that's absurd altogether. So astronomy is relaying to you the mechanical things that's happening in the heavens. And yes, they are real. And yes, God is in charge of them. And yes, he does tell you how he's going to reconfigure astronomy, because he's going to. And he calls this in the Bible the powers of the heavens, and he calls them the powers over the earth. These things he says he's going to change. So there is no relationship to what I do and astrology. That's really not even worth mentioning. So that is to say, if you're going to read my book, you better get up to speed on celestial mechanics. You better know how the solar system works, because that's what I'm talking about, existentially. Right. And it's pretty important when you realize that God is no respecter of persons. And the reason that is because he don't care if you know or not. Now, that usually takes a lot of people by surprise. They're like, well, God wrote the Bible, it just confuses me to death. No, he didn't write it to confuse you. Oh, he wrote it to tell you exactly up front what he's going to do, because you can't stop him anyway. This is why the Bible states he's no respecter of persons. So with that in mind, this intrigued me since I was a child. When I would look at the Hebrew as a child, I knew, wait a minute, God just said he was going to stand up creation. What does that mean? What does that mean? Also, you'll take note that some translations, like the KJV, when you look at Isaiah chapter 24, it says it's going to turn the world upside down. That's not what the Hebrew says. The Hebrew says that the face is going to be tilled under. He's going to till it. It's going to become like quicksand. So what I did is I went and took geology in an institution of higher learning, because I wanted to know the machination he was talking about. Of course, what I discovered was exactly what everybody else knows about that's in the field of geology. He was talking about liquefaction. And that's how we're going to go back to the days of Noah without anybody being killed. It's just he's going to do this on a planet-wide scale. When he does, creation is literally going to be stood up.
Wow.
So astrology has nothing to do with that at all.
Yeah. I believe that anybody that's actually reading your book, that's not even a question. I think that's just somebody seeing it on Facebook and being like, oh, he's talking, but it's not even, to me, that's not even a question. You're reading it. It's astronomy. One thing I would like to ask Matthew, but there's a part in the book where you're talking about the celestial scapegoat, and
that's right.
I talk about that there possibly being an expelled fifth gas giant that could have happened.
That's right.
Chronicle creation.
That is correct. NASA calls this the fifth gas giant Nice model. This is real.
Right.
Okay. This is real. Okay. So literally the only thing that makes sense with our orbitals for this solar system's configuration, the mathematics point to one simple thing.
Yeah.
Jupiter did a grand tack and rearranged everything. And not only that, he swapped the places of Uranus and Neptune, and the mathematics proves he ejected a fifth gas giant. That's the only thing that proves the math. You can go to NASA, look it up, learn all about it, because it's true. It really did happen. So
you had a podcast, I think yesterday, that was talking about some of this. I was listening to it earlier today and was like, oh man, this is all relevant to what you're going with. It's really, I think if people get a chance to listen to you, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, it really does. I don't think it's that far out there to get it, but it helps to have the book and read it.
Yes, it does. Because, well, there's a whole lot of background information that has to be explained a piece at a time. And the reason why the book is successful is because of my two daughters. You have to realize that every one of these chapters were written at least 3 times. Yeah. Because I would write a chapter, they would edit it and say, no, Daddy, you're talking over their heads. You got to redo it. They have to understand it. Right. So literally that's what took this book so long to write, is because it had to be reduced. I had to reduce it. I had to reduce it. I had to reduce it. I had to reduce it to its lowest common denominator so everybody could understand, because it's not that I wanted to be a big selling book to astrophysicists. That's not what I wanted. Right. What I wanted is what my daughters were trying to accomplish. If the common person in the pew in the church, if they can't understand it, I'm not edifying them. And if I'm not edifying you, I'm wasting God's time, and I fear God.
Yeah.
So I know it's my job to teach you what God is talking about. I show you the Hebrew. I show you the Greek. I don't even care about the English. So in order to do that, I need to fear God. So that's why it took so long to get this book out, because it was continually reduced to its lowest common denominator so everybody could understand it.
Sure. No, man, honestly, the book's a blessing, man. Like, I really, it really, when Jeremy sent it to me, the thing for it, and I pulled it up, started reading, and I'm like, okay, let's see what's going on here. And I was like, and I really appreciate the fact that you did. It is brought down to a level that most people, if they can just, comprehend basic English, they can figure out what you're saying. And you're giving all the scriptures there. It totally makes sense. I mean, I was like, and we live in a time now where people are starting to their eyes are being opened to things that they've never seen before. Anything having to do with the Nephilim and Genesis 6:4, or even divine council stuff, Psalm 82. People are that's starting to become normalized. Like, people are starting to actually talk about it like, oh, this isn't some kind of weird fringy stuff. This is stuff that we should know, and our churches should have been teaching this, and they haven't. So I really love this, because that's what I said. As soon as he was talking about the book, I was like, oh, dude, I definitely want people to see this, because I think it's amazing. Not trying to prop you up, dude. I give God all the glory, but man, he is working through you, brother. Seriously, I'm so glad that we've got to see this, and I think people are going to really get a lot out of this. So now you're not a date setter either. You're not setting dates on stuff of when this is going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
This is what's going to happen, because that's what God said. This is what he's
That's
put
right.
in scripture. And I think a lot of people are going to have, well, they're like, well, how come if it's so noticeable, no one's ever talked about this? Why aren't, and I think that's the polysemic issues of what you're talking about here, because there's some things you haven't talked about in when you were talking about the, I don't know, was it Apocalypse Isaiah? Was that the one, the podcast? Yes. It had some things in there that I was like, the polysemic word came at me, and I was like, and it hit me and realized, I went, oh, wow, man, I've never seen this discussed this way, but it made complete sense once you did. And I did it. At that point, I was like, okay, you've got me. I'm in. I was like, I'm ordering the book, read it. I'm like, okay, dude, I'm serious. I think people, I hope people buy this book, but hey, here's the thing. We're going to give away a free book. Matthew is going to hook us up. And I think we're just going to go ahead and drop. The secret word is going to be polysemic. So I don't care if you can't spell it right, but polysemic, it's a great one. I thought about isochronal. You got a couple cool buzzwords that I'm like, dude, these are great, man. But dude, Jeremy's post all the time, he's always polysemic, and I'm like, people are gonna be like, what is this polysemic stuff? What is this? But when you read it, see it in the context of your book, it makes total sense. And it's I think it's very important. I think me personally, I think time is short. I don't think we have a whole lot of time left with things, and this is information that we better know. We better be reading it and getting in the scriptures and really putting this knowledge to use.
Well, I certainly agree, and that's why I've agreed to whoever wins the contest, I will sign the hard copy book that's upstairs on my bookshelf. I'm going to give you my copy, and I'm going to sign your name and send it to you, because
I know what the word means.
Because what Kenny said about this program that I just did last night is really important, because you need to look all this up on the internet right now. It's in the news that Neptune is doing very strange and scary things. It's heating up when it should not be. So
knowing what I'd read already, I understood your terminology. So when I was listening to the podcast this morning, I was like, oh, I know why you're saying this, and some of the terminology starts to get into your head, and it's, dude, seriously, man, it's great stuff.
So this is what is so important, because our mission is to find that one sheep, right?
Yeah.
That one lost sheep. We're the 99, right?
Yeah.
Well,
that's right.
In this case, ladies and gentlemen, once you know what's going on, when you see something in the news about Neptune, just like Kenny just said, it triggered him. He knew this was important, because that is, celestially speaking, Uranus and Neptune are two twins for a reason. And that gas giant that was ejected, it's pretty important. So we need to realize that when things like this happen, it doesn't mean nothing. It's no,
Sure.
Oh, that's not important, I just skip it.
Right.
Once you read the book, you're going to realize that God is wanting you, just like he stated in Genesis chapter 1, verse 14. That's what they're for. That's their purpose.
Yeah. And also too, a lot of the people start, when you start talking about extra planets, would that be considered Planet X that we've heard about for so long, that that's actually
Yes.
what it really is? I mean, at one point they were like, Planet X is coming, and it was like 2010, 2012, and they put all these dates on it, and the information would be there. And I'd say, I believe this stuff is right. I think they had it wrong as to when it was coming. That they're kind of
Right.
trying to, but what you're saying, there's a lot of data from NASA that you can go look at and see the equations,
It
the
is.
mathematical aspects make
Yes.
complete sense. So and
Yes.
the book really lays that out very well, very well.
Well, really what the book does is tells you that this is what God is stating is going to happen. And my footnotes is not scripture verses. My footnotes is NASA.
Right.
This is what God says. And it's going to disturb the person that reads it, because when it hits them, it's slowly going to sink in that, oh my goodness, did NASA know this because the Bible said so?
Oh boy.
It'll make you wonder. It really will make you wonder.
Yeah, it will. Absolutely. No, that's what I really think, man. The book is just fantastic. I find myself going back to it now. Every time I hear you, I listen on your podcast, I'm having to go back and go, wait a minute, what was he talking about there? But the book's laid out really well, so it's easy to find the stuff you're talking about. I think people are going to really, it's not only educational, it's edifying to me, the biblical aspect of it. But man, that's what I wondered. I didn't know, and I kind of asked, is like, I didn't know what your background, but your scientific stuff that you're putting in here is just, it's amazing. And to me, I was like, you're laying this out in complete conjunction with scripture. It lays
That's
out
right.
perfectly. There's no question. There's no if this, it might mean this or it might mean that. No, you're dropping Hebrew words. This is what that comes into with concepts people probably already know, but haven't fleshed it out to its full extent. And your book does that. So to me, man, it's like I said, I'm hoping some people go pick this up. If you can, man, can you drop some info on your podcast, what your ministry is and stuff like that, so some people can know what to look for?
Sure. If you want to get to the ministry, it's wi2c.com. wi2c.com. That is based off of the scripture that says that the Spirit will show you what is to come. So that is the ministry. It's Maranatha Ministry. I'm not the only minister there. There's Joe Muzidla, Benjamin Lawrence. There's John McMahon. There is Jose Casteron. So there's a whole battery of people that is a part of my ministry. Sure. And that's what the name means. Maranatha means, "O Lord, come" in Greek. That's what it means. So I'm not going to say too much about it other than that. wi2c.com. That'll get you what you need to see.
Yeah. And your podcast, like I pull it up off of Spotify. I think I've also seen it on Spreaker. I don't know where
it's on iTunes.
Okay, good. Yeah.
Yeah, it's everywhere, I believe.
Great. That's awesome. That's what I just want people to be able to kind of see it. I have it on my thing now, so it pops up, kind of watch what when yours come up, and then then I look at it and go, gosh, I gotta find 2 hours, because my job doesn't allow me to just listen to stuff. I have to literally sit down and say, I'm gonna listen to this podcast, or I'm driving and listening and stuff like that. So and I find myself stopping and looking into stuff. Like I'm like, okay, hold up, wait a minute. And I have to get my Bible and look at it. I'm like, and I see it, I'm like, man, it's amazing. I always find myself, I'm sure people will see me driving by and I'm like this, like my mouth's open. And they're like, what is wrong with that dude? I'm like, dude, I'm listening to this podcast and I'm getting my mind blown. And we even talked about this, we're joking. I was like, no, I'm serious. I even told some people that work with my page and stuff, I said, you're going to have your mind blown, because none of them have read this yet. And I said, wait till you see this. It's going to be probably one of the best episodes we've ever had. I think people are going to be really into it. I love this stuff. Have you ever thought about doing any kind of a teaching series with the book that people could follow along with your ministers and stuff? Because I think it would be fantastic. I would love to see that.
Well, my wife would love to see that too, but unfortunately, I have a full-time job I have to do on top of the ministry. So
I feel you.
I would love to, and yes, if I had enough vacation time, I would. I certainly would.
Yeah,
I certainly have written a plethora of curriculum before,
sure.
but it's kind of hard when you've got a family and a full-time job to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I totally understand. I'm amazed at what you're putting out with the amount of content you're dropping now. I know. I was like, man, you got a full time. I mean, like I said, I teach about 70 students a week. I have a pretty full schedule, and I try to just do this when I can. It's just my calling for it. I love it. My feeling for me is that I love that I'm able to bring you to people, that I'm bringing what you're bringing out, and you're just being you're pulling this information. God is working through you. I'm amazed by it. I'm just, I just hope more people see this, because it's much needed information, and it's very edifying, man. I think people are going to love this. So, like I said, one more time, I'm going to put in here the magic word is going to be polysemic, and you're going to get not a soft cover like I have, like this, which I love.
A hard copy.
You didn't get a hard cover. He's giving you the real.
My copy.
I'm like, I mean, that's pretty good, man. Most people be asking for, hey, man, can I get just the PDF of Terra Rectus? No, man, we're getting the hardback. I appreciate that. I think we'll probably let this play for a while, and before we decide on anything on who I'm gonna give it to, because I want some people to see this. We'll see where it gets out. I'll throw it up on YouTube, and I'll throw it up on Spotify and Anchor. That's what I'm doing. What I have right now, I'm gonna expand as time goes. I'm really new to this whole thing, and I'm just kind of like, hey, we got 3 dudes on a box up here. That's enough for me, man. Good stuff. But well, Jeremy, I just want to say, Jeremy, thank you so much for introducing us to Matthew, because I love what's going on with it. I can't wait to see what else you have with it. I feel like, man, this is a book everybody should have, and I hope they get onto the podcast, man, because now I'm like trying to dive back so many years. I'm like, I don't know how it's going to be a while for me to catch up. I'm going to be like trying to ask you questions of something. You're going to be like, man, that was 2015, dude. Catch up, buddy. Come on, get with the program. But I'm trying, man, because it's really worth it. Everything I've listened to so far, all your ministers, man. I've heard some of the different ones speak. You've got a great ministry, and it's really edifying and such a blessing for people. So, Jeremy, thank you for sending it to me, because you were sent it to me, and I went, all right, man. If Jeremy's this crazy hot about it, I got to check it out, and he was right. So I'm excited about it.
Honestly, dude, like I'm very discerning about things. And when me and Matthew's mutual friend showed me this stuff, I didn't understand it right away. Like every episode I was listening to like 3 or 4 times, because there was so much in there. Absolutely. But I just knew that it was true. Like it was all connecting to the point where I'm like, people got to hear this, man. People got to read this. And you were the first one that really responded to some of the things, that I was posting. And so that's just God, man. I think God's
absolutely
showing certain people at the moment, this type of stuff, because for some reason it has something majorly to do with our own walk with him. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And this is what I've been waiting for, man. This is deep stuff. This is the meat of the word. So
I'm telling you right now, Jeremy, you need to get your own podcast. You need to start doing things, man. You are really seriously, people will love it. I will push it as much as possible. I'm going to push Matthew's stuff, because I really think people need to hear it. Has nothing to do with, propping you guys up. It's you guys are seriously got the word of God. It's coming through. People got to hear this stuff. And that's how I feel about it. So, but listen, I think we get a little bit of time here. If there's anything else that you guys, I don't know my podcast gets into all kinds of stuff. I'm a musician by trade. That's what I do with stuff. I have no idea. Matthew, do you play any instruments? Are you a musician in any way or form? Nothing? Play the radio?
Nope. I don't even play the radio. What I do is play the Bible 24/7. That's a fact. Literally, I will give you a little tidbit. Most of that book was written at work on my lunchtime.
Dude, that's
most
great.
of it. That's what I do. I
great.
study the Bible so I can give the ecclesia, that is God's church, give it to them. They need to be edified. Just like Jeremy just said, he's hungry. Oh, yeah. Nobody is feeding God's people. No. That's what I do 24/7. If I am not producing something to edify you with, I'm studying to do so. That's what I do all the time. So I'm sorry to say that I don't even play the radio.
That's
I
okay.
don't.
Hey man, look, most of my time when I'm not doing stuff like this, I've switched from it's my job. I teach music with it, but I mean, I'm taking classes with many. Dr. Michael Heiser, I'm in my second year with him. Classes, I take classes with Dr. Judd Burton. Everybody's like, what are you going from this, man? And I'm just like, I'm hungry for this information, just like Jeremy is. I can't get enough of it. Every day I'm studying, I'm reading, learning Hebrew, learning all these things, because I'm like, I wish I had done it earlier in my life. But I feel like that sometimes God puts you in places, and this is where he put me at right now for this. So, hey man, if I can help get you guys in front of people and get people to see what you're doing, I feel like that's God's definitely putting us together for a reason. So, Matthew, thank you so much, man. I'm a fan now, dude. I think you've got some amazing stuff. I love the book. I can't wait to get some people to it and go into it. And I will probably, now that we've actually talked and met, you may get messages from me once in a while and be like, I want to ask you a question about this. So hopefully you're okay with that, just because I'm listening to things.
No, I'm perfectly fine with that. That's what I'm for. I'm afraid not to. Let me make sure that the listener and the viewer understands. You can absolutely send me questions, and I literally get minimum 10 to 15 per day.
Wow.
That's my job. I'm afraid not to answer you. So it might take me, a week, 10 days, because I have to make a backlog. But yes, I will answer you. I want you to answer the questions because I'm afraid of God. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. So he's going to come back finding me doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. So yes, send me as many questions as you want. And yes, I will respond. Just give me up to 10 days because, some days I'll do an episode like I did last night about planetary migration, and I'll have 100 questions just asking for the links to NASA.
Sure. Yeah. I knew yesterday when I was listening to it, I was like, oh man, this is it was so big. I was like, I don't know how I'm going to absorb this information, but thankfully I'd read your book and kind of could follow what you were talking about. I was like, okay, this is good, but good stuff. Jeremy, you got anything else to say, buddy?
Yeah, I was wondering how much time do we have left, brother? Just because I want to ask a question, but I don't. If it's gonna take,
we can go as long as you want, man.
Okay. So Matthew, one of the big parts of your book that caught my eye and that you talk about on your podcast a lot is the event of the relocation for believers.
That's
I was
right.
wondering for the bride. I was wondering if you could break that down for us a little bit, if possible.
Okay, well, that is a can of worms because most people that study eschatology, they're stuck in this rut called the rapture. Most importantly, a pre-tribulational rapture. Okay, so whenever people, usually when they approach this ministry, it's usually the first thing they ask, and that's usually the first thing I have to do that is teach them what the Bible actually says, because this is what God actually says. He says that you're going to be on the planet Earth during the tribulation, but that doesn't mean you're going through the tribulation. He repeatedly states he's going to relocate you. He's going to gather you. Oh, wow. He calls this in the book of Revelation, he's stretching his tabernacle over you. The Old Testament calls this number one, the tabernacle of David. So we know that during the Exodus, this is where the children of Israel was because their shoes didn't wear out. That's impossible. It's impossible the soles of their shoes didn't wear out in 40 years. Right. Their clothes didn't wear out. So we know this is the type of place we're going to. God calls this in the apocalypse of Isaiah, he calls it his vineyard. Let me say that again. He calls it his vineyard. So he's got multiple names for it. He also calls this his fold. Now, some translations will say a sheepfold or sheep pen, but he also states that right out in the open. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is no pre-tribulational rapture, but that doesn't mean you're going through the tribulation, because you're not, because God repeatedly states this. Just do yourself a favor, everybody, and look up 1 Thessalonians chapter 5. It tells you what's going to happen. It starts with the great day of the Lord. That's God the Father. That's who that is. He starts the tribulation, and at the end of that chapter, he tells you of Christ Perusia. That's the return of Christ. That ends the tribulation. So during those 1,260 days, Jeremy, You don't need to be afraid or be upset that you're going to be dealing with the beast and all, fires and earthquakes. No, you're not. He's taking you to a place. He himself calls it a vineyard.
Right.
Yes, he does. Read the Apocalypse of Isaiah. It's Isaiah chapters 24 through 35. He tells you, not only that, he tells you that he himself tends it moment by moment. So a relocation is going to take place when he's here. When he gets here and kicks us up to a 0-degree axis, he's also going to relocate you, just like Revelation chapter 12 states, to a place that he himself has prepared. So you're going to be relocated. The rapture happens at the end at Christ's return, and that's when you get changed. What the Greek actually says is alagosmothea. You're going to be changed. So that's usually people's first question, because they're real uneasy. They know that everybody's teaching the rapture. They go through the Bible.
Right.
Rapture's not in there. That word's nowhere in the text. Nowhere does God say that. So they get this uneasy feeling, and they come to people like me and say, well, what does the Bible say? Well, yes, the Bible says you're not going to go through the tribulation. You're going to be relocated to a secure place. And literally, God calls this, one of the places he calls this his vineyard. Look it up. I'm telling you the truth. So that's the most important thing about end time eschatology that the listener needs to realize. Now, most of you have already realized that what you're saying about a pre-tribulation don't make no sense, because Matthew 24 doesn't say that. Isaiah doesn't say it. Jeremiah doesn't say it. It's not in Ezekiel. It's not in Lamentations. It's not in Hosea, Amos. It's not anywhere. That's right, because that's not what God says. He says he's going to relocate you, Jeremy. So it's a relocation, not a rapture. So you're not going to go through the tribulation, but you're not going to heaven. If you think you're going to heaven, that's actually what Satan says in Isaiah chapter 14. That's bad. If you want to ascend the heights and the stars of God, that's bad. That's real bad. So he is going to relocate you to this place. I'm not sure I understand the physics of it, because I mean, who could? But this is what he talks about. You're going to be relocated.
Well, you mentioned something earlier too. One thing that you don't hear in eschatology is the difference between the day of the Lord and the return of Christ. Usually those things are clumped together. So, I mean, the day of the Lord is when the Father comes back first.
Yes.
Right?
Okay. Yes.
You take it away.
I want everybody to do this. This is the best way for you to understand and to begin to unconfuse your mind. I'm going to give you 4 points. This is what Jeremiah states, Lamentations, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Amos, Habakkuk, Haggai, all of them say this. This is the 4 things that happen. This is the 4 things you're going to be doing during the end times. Number 1, the martyrs cry out to God. Number 2, the woman flees to the wilderness. Number 3, God gathers the woman. And number 4, Jesus changes the woman. Write those 4 down. Look for those. You're always going to run into them, because that's what God says 100% of the time.
Amazing.
Yeah, that was mind blowing when I first heard it, man. I was like, what? Wait, what? You know what I mean? Because literally nobody else says that. You're the first person I've ever listened to who brought that up. And it made so much sense. And then him impacting the earth. And that's when the change happens, not us, but the earth changes, goes to a 0 degree. And then it just snowballs from there, like with the information. And
yes,
I don't know. It's for me, I can soak it all up, but I cannot explain it. So when I go to try, like with my wife or whatever, I'm like, oh, you got to check this out. Look what I just learned. And then I'm like halfway through, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to botch it all. Just read the book or listen to this podcast.
Hey. Phone a friend. Hey, can I call Matthew? Just hang on. I got to figure this out. Hey, now, why do you think there's such a movement toward a pre-tribulation rapture? Why has that been pushed so hard to people? Because a lot of people, that's what they've been raised believing.
Right. And well, That's a very difficult question for me to answer, but I have to answer truthfully because this is what the New Testament says about it. They're doing this for profit.
Wow.
Okay. The only way they can continue to make a profit off of you, Kenny, is to keep you in confusion. That's how they do it. If they keep you confused, because if they tell you what is to come exactly like the Bible states, you're no longer going to pay for their materials. You're no longer going to watch their television programs, Kenny. You're not.
Yeah.
So the way they keep you as a constant source of income is keeping you confused. They keep you in the dark. They keep you in the dark. So that's why when people come to me, I will tell you chapter and verse. I'll not only do that, if you need it in Hebrew, I'll give it to you in Hebrew. I'll give it to you in Greek. And then I'm just going to give it to you. That's my job, is to show you where it's at. You have to swallow it, Kenny.
Yeah.
You may not like what God says. And 99% of the time, you're not going to like what God says because he says you can't steal, right?
Right.
Okay, so
No, it's
99% of the time, it's human nature to break the Beatitudes, right, Kenny?
Yeah.
So you should know up front, 99% of the time, he's going to tell you what you don't want to hear. But he is going to tell you, and that's my job. If you come to me and you ask me, okay, where's rapture in the Bible? I'm going to say, well, it ain't in the Bible, but I'll tell you what is. I'll tell you what it is. And
yeah,
that's why those 4 bullet points I give, literally every chapter concerning this always states that no, the rapture's misdirection.
right.
What he always says is he's going to change you. So once you realize that, that's the logosmothea in the Bible. This is where it's at, and this is where you can find it. That's all I can do is tell you what God actually says. That's my job.
Now, would what you're talking about be considered pre-wrath, not pre-trib? Like you're not going to be raptured, and you're going to be somewhere safe.
Right.
While tribulation is happening. We'll be
right. Well, yes, that is to say what you're saying, but that would confuse people because then people would think that I'm saying that it's a pre-wrath rapture. No, I'm not.
Right. Okay. I got you.
Yes, okay. It's a pre-wrath relocation, Kenny.
Okay. You do. That's. I've never heard anyone say it like that before. Ever, and it makes no sense.
Read the Bible.
Yeah.
If you start reading the Bible, Kenny, you're going to see it because you can't escape it.
Yeah.
That's what he always says.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. I think we lost Jeremy. I don't know what happened. He looks like he disappeared off the thing. But hey, listen, Matthew, thanks so much, man. I have learned so much. You have taught me a lot in about an hour, and I'm definitely going to keep listening to your podcast. And I'll probably have to reread your book a couple more times, but that's okay because it's that good to me. I'm like, it's good. That's right. We got another book right there somewhere. Here it is, right here. Terra Rectus. Can you can just order this off of Amazon also? Because I think that's where I got
you can
it
order
from.
it off Amazon.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, but it's better. It's better if you win the contest and get it's literally my author's hard copy. I'm going to sign it with your name, and I'll send it to your house. So yes.
Well,
that's Matthew, the best way to get it.
It is really, it really is. But for everybody else, it's like, hey man, if we don't win the thing, they need to get the book. They really do. I mean, to me, it needs to be. People need to read it. I can't wait to talk to people because now I have this information, and a lot of people, it's so new to them. They're like, I don't know what you're talking about, and you start kind of like, well, wait a minute, it says right here, and I'll tell you this, and then pull your Bible out. You say, this is it. There's plain as day. How do you think
plain as day?
It's plain as day, but how do you think people have missed it so much for so long? Because I mean, I read my Bible a lot. I try to learn a lot of my languages and everything's going on with it, and I still feel like that I missed things that you have shown me now. You opened my eyes to some things I've never seen before, and I'm thank God. That's all I can say about that, man.
Well, most of the things that I see, Kenny, I don't see it in English.
Yeah.
Most of the things I see, you see it in the original language. That's where you see it. And if you're not reading it in the original text, you can't see it. So, that's what God has provided me for, because everything is beautiful in its time. So Literally, that's what I'm doing, because a lot of people, Kenny, they can't do that.
Right.
Whenever I used to work in a homeless shelter, we used to give out IQ tests. So
Okay.
all of the homeless would come in and do it, because every time they took the IQ test, we'd give them $20. So I can tell you that most of those people, they average an IQ of 80.
Okay.
And that's who we're needing to save, Kenny.
Mm.
And I know they can't learn Hebrew and they can't learn Greek.
Sure.
But if you come to me, I will riddle into you God's wonders. I will tell you and I'll show it to you so you can understand it.
Do you find that people coming into it are just starting to use things like the Strong's Concordance? Does that help with breaking down stuff into the original Hebrew and Greek?
Yes, it does. And one of the first things I tell to them is, you need to go to Amazon, and whatever translation you're using, that is to say, if you're using ESV,
right,
you can get a Strong's Concordance that is made for the ESV. So if you're doing the New American Standard Bible or the New King James Version, you can get a Strong's that's keyed to your translation. That's really the first thing you need to do, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. Yeah, because I've had Strong's, and most of mine have been King James Version that I've used for years. I mean, that's just what I never could find it anywhere else. But I guess now that's fantastic. So that's good news. That's something I did not know. So I will definitely look in some different ones. Do you have a translation that you feel is better than others?
Well, back in 1995, I was one of the people that helped proofread the New American Standard Bible. So the New American Standard Bible, 1995, that is the mainstay of this ministry. It's what we've always used. And just in 2020, it's entered the public domain. So this is one of the reasons why God told me it's a beautiful time, Matthew. You're supposed to do it now. So this is why I waited till Thanksgiving Day to release the book, because it was at that time that the New American Standard Bible 95 was released into the public. So literally I knew, and this ministry was praying for the perfect time, because I knew it was key critical. It had to be released at the right moment. So that's why all that was done. So yes, that is the mainstay of this ministry. When you hear Maranatha Ministries, we're going to be using the New American Standard Bible 1995 update.
Fantastic. That's great news. I will definitely put that in my collection. I've got a whole lot. I like to read different Bibles and see what things are going on for it. But New American Standard 1995, that's fantastic. So listen, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. I really hope people have been edified by this. This has been an eye-opening experience, man. I love the fact that it's so biblically solid, but you're using, your scientific methods of stuff going on to it, man. I think people really get caught up in that. And to me, you're putting them together, man. They're completely hand in hand. And it's fantastic. So thanks so much for coming on here. And hopefully, man, we'll find out who's won the book and get some people on there. And I hope people come to your podcast and your ministry and learn as much as I've been learning so far. So God bless you, brother. I really love your ministry and what you're doing, and I'm glad that Jeremy introduced us. So hopefully we'll do something again soon, my friend.
We will. Just ask and you shall receive.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for having us on. It was a pleasure.
Absolutely, man. Well, everybody, hey, remember the Rock with Kenny C. We got a Facebook group page. We've got our YouTube channel. Little things here and there, and that's right. Going on to it. I am going to be speaking at the Go Therefore conference that Mike Spalding is having in July. So if you want to come to Lima, Ohio, there's a whole lot of speakers going to be there. Derek and Sharon Gilbert, Carl Gallups, just some great. Yeah, it's going to be fantastic. So Michael Lake.
You could invite me.
Hey, you know what? Honestly, I'll
invite me.
I will talk to Mike. Seriously, I think if he sees this, you would be great for that, man. Seriously, you would do fantastic. So maybe that's why we're supposed to meet. Maybe that's why this is happening. So we'll try to get. I think, yeah, Lord willing, absolutely. Matthew, thank you so much, my friend, and we will we'll catch up again soon. Everybody, thanks for watching the Rock Kitty C. We'll see you guys real soon.